Namaskar. Welcome to this session of Straight Drive. I'm Sudhanshu Mani. The subject we have chosen today is relevant to all of us. It is about the economy and specifically the stimuli on the demand side and what more can we do about it. Friends, I have to start with a cliche, and the cliche is that these are difficult times, and indeed these are difficult times. There are dichotomies, ironies, double whammies. On one side, lack of employment. On the other, so many industries are actually closed because they don't have labor. Government revenues are falling, tax collection, the way it is going, it is not conceivable that the government would be able to pull it up to even the levels of last year, let alone the budgeted number of 24 lakh crore plus. Government has done a lot towards liquidity, but the problem is people are not buying, entities, institutions, enterprises are not purchasing. We have a powerful panel for you to debate the issue. Let me introduce them to you. I'll start with Professor Sanjeev Tripathi. He has worked in government as well as private sector and now is a professor of marketing in Indian Institute of Management, Indore. We have Mr. Ramnath. He has also worked in both private and government sector and currently is the Director of Supply Chain Management of Signify, currently based in Indonesia, but keeps a good watch of what is going on in the economic field in India. And we have Mr. B.L. Sharma, a founder member of Carvale. He's the CEO of Carvale as well as Bikewale. He has great insight in the automotive ecosystem of the country as well as automotive related consumer behavior. So let me start with Professor Sanjeev Tripathi. What is the change that you have seen in respect of not buying at all or a change in the consumer behavior in the current COVID situation? Professor Tripathi.
In fact, the whole COVID, it has resulted in major changes in how the consumers have reacted. And let me talk about it at a more fundamental level. So if you look at consumer behavior, it can be impacted by the social cultural changes. It can be impacted by the technology. It can be impacted by natural disasters. It can be impacted by regulatory frameworks. And what has happened is that out of all the four, the one that we think of happening least likely is a natural disaster, and that I would claim a pandemic situation to be a natural disaster. And importantly, this has resulted in changes in all three fronts. It has resulted in social distancing that impacts our social and cultural life. It has impacted regulatory frameworks. So there are curfews, there are lockdowns, etc. And it has also resulted in technology. So we have had technology evolution in the way we use Zoom and other platforms, online shopping. And therefore, what I see is that a major change has happened. Some of it has directly, which is visible to naked eye. So if you look at a major change in terms of use of sanitizers, masks, travel vacations have come down. People have started using more gadgets. Online ordering has gone up. Sports consumption has gone down. There is no sports that's happening. People are not really watching sports because it's what's happening is recorded version. And the way I look at it, consumer behavior in these times has gone into three phases. The first one was panic. So initially, when the pandemic set in and there were a lot of lockdowns, people got panicky and they started buying. And if you look at the story, what was happening in Europe or in US, people were hoarding, right from toilet paper to anything that they could lay their hands on. There was also a feeling of loss of control. So I don't know what's going to happen in future. So I wanted to have something tangible to hold in my hand. The third thing that happened was a feeling of scarcity. I know that I might be short of resources, and therefore let me try and get as much as I wanted. There was a lot of impulse buying at this stage. Next, when we moved, we realized that as we started coping up with it, there was a bit of risk aversion. I didn't want to try anything which was unknown to me, and therefore people started becoming risk averse. And as of now, I think we are still passing through that stage where we are not going to buy any unfamiliar brands. Our pantry levels, as and when we recoup our pantries, we are trying to top it up to a higher level than what we were doing in past. Impulse buying is going to be happening at a much lower stage. We'll buy the necessities. Mortality, the fear about mortality is also going to be here. And I see it all around me. People, I know of a lot of friends, a lot of lawyers are saying that people are writing their wills. Even people as young as 30, 35 are writing their wills. And again, the spending power coupled with uncertainty about future, people have become much more price sensitive. So you're not going to spend on aspirational brands. You're going to take care of the core needs. Next, what I see is that, and that is the whole idea of the third phase, where I hope it's going to happen in the next few months. This is about learning and habit change. So people have been using this time, the pandemic, the lockdowns, etc., to brush up on their hobbies, cooking, family time. And therefore, I hope that this might stick on if we continue for about next 3-4 months. So people have become more family oriented, people have started cooking, and therefore it can again have an impact. I think people have become more health conscious. So health insurance might go up, consumption of immunity boosters, people become more worried about their lifestyle problems and therefore managing comorbidities and hygiene, so etc. All this is going to happen. To what extent it happens, I think one question that everybody asks is, what's going to be happen in future? I think a short answer to that would be whether it's a new normal or an old normal. Whether it's going to be adjusted demand, that's a new normal, or whether it's going to be old demand, that is a pent up demand where we start consuming more, given that we have not consumed a lot. And that's still a question to be answered. As I see, it depends on two things. One is, how long is this going to continue? Whether it's going to continue for another 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. How soon do we have the vaccine? The second is how, to the extent that human beings adjust. If we start adjusting to the new to this situation, our habits might change permanently.
Thank you. So I see some optimism there, some positivity. So let me get back to the government measures, particularly the 20 lakh crore package, and it's debatable whether it is 20 lakh crore or 3 lakh crore, and RBI measures included in that. All said and done, government has taken action to improve liquidity, given an assurance to banks that guarantees against loans. But the question is that anecdotally and otherwise also, I don't meet too many, particularly MSMEs, who are willing to take loans. Debt-free companies won't. Those who had debts say we still have to service the debts already. So unless the demand improves, manufacturing won't pick up, because they may take a loan, but they won't produce unless there is a demand or an order. So what do you think, Professor Ramnath, is missing in this government action for demand side measures?
So first, thank you for the question. And what the government has done, it has As you rightly said, we won't debate the numbers, but the government has done a direct benefit transfer to the accounts of women, elderly, and farmers and construction workers. So that's something that the government has done in terms of the direct cash transfer in a view to boost demand. So that's one step that the government has done. But knowing that consumption and of services and goods is about 60% of demand, that certainly is not enough. And also, like Professor Tripathi mentioned, the consumer sentiment is not going to change quickly. It depends on a lot of circumstances. And knowing that everybody has taken a salary cut, people are unsure of the future. It's not very easy for somebody to go and spend money, especially on aspirational goods. Nobody's going to rush out to buy a TV or a new mobile or a new computer or a new car. All these will be delayed, and that way the demand is not going to just increase in the short time. And that's where I believe what the government should have done. And one of the components of demand generation is the government stepping in, so to speak, on pump priming the economy. And what that means is spending on big capital projects. For example, given that we are in a health crisis, it's a good time for the government to spend on healthcare, improving the whole healthcare infrastructure in our country. Similarly, it would be a good time for the country or government to spend on maybe low-cost housing. We have seen how the Dharavi slums has led to propagation of the virus, and it was quite tough to contain the spread of the virus. So this again a good time for the government to step in and spend on infrastructure projects. Like I said, healthcare, could be low-cost housing, and it could be even things like roads and railways and other projects. It could also be small city level projects, local projects. Could be drinking water, sanitation, any number of projects. You know, our country needs a lot of these, and it's not very difficult to think of these projects. In fact, the other thing, if I could be a little more creative, what can be done is we have seen so many migrant laborers who've gone back to their villages. And it would be a good time to use this hiatus in manufacturing to upskill them. One way to do that is you set up classes or training schools in these villages, and based on the attendance, maybe have a stipend for them. So what that does is, again, you're putting money directly into the hands of people who need it. And that, in a way, would create demand with the spending of the government on these big projects. And the good thing about construction and other activities is they have a huge multiplier effect. There are many industries linked to it. So that would be my take. And maybe, you know, if I could just also say that maybe the government is a little hesitant to spend that money, and I've not seen it as yet, is because of the 3.5% fiscal deficit that the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act of 2003 specifies. But having said that, like you mentioned, sir, that it is a once in a lifetime crisis. These crises don't come often. And the FRBM is a sophisticated piece of legislation, and it does allow for an increase in the fiscal deficit. And this is the time to do it. And a little bit of excess would help the government spend money and pump prime the economy, thereby generating demand through the trickle-down effect. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. Taking a cue from what you said about construction, I'll come to you, Mr. Sharma. You'll agree that real estate and automotive industries, they have the best or the maximum upward and downward linkages, and any revival there can have a multiplier effect. And it can release multiple streams of interlinked benefits, employment and opportunities. So what would be your recipe for these two sectors, and also what would you think the government can also chip in with? Mr. Sharma.
Right, Mr. Mani. So, Mr. Ramnath just talked about a bit of economy and even the construction side, and Mr. Tripathi talked about the whole consumer demand cycle and demand sentiment. The industry I'm in is automobile, and as you understand, it's one of the most expensive products out there to buy. And unless the demand comes back, it is not going to be very easy, let's say, for the entire industry to survive on. To give you perspective very quickly, automobiles contributes about 7 to 7.5% into country's GDP and 50% of the entire manufacturing GDP. So this is a significant industry for the country, for the government, and not just the OEM dealers and the people employed there, the ancillaries, the component manufacturers. There are tons of people, employment, and people depend on it. Now, let's talk about two things. One would be the industry itself. What could the sector do? And then what could government do to revive stuff here? For the sector, my idea would be that all kind of casualties, or let's say calamities, are only short term. This will pass as well, and I'm fairly sure that India is a long term consumption story. We are world's second largest population and will become probably the largest at some point. And as that happens, India is a young country, etc. So we all know that it's a consumption theory. As this story in my head is intact, India automobiles, or let's say realty, would shine. It's just that the growth has been subpar, so to speak, but the long-term perspective would remain there. So my view would be that any kind of calamity brings some time for retrospection. We should actually, the people in the industry should go back and think this through. What they are doing is right, what is they are doing is not right, and how do we take it from there. Some would cut costs, some would put more money into R&D, some would let's look at the future 10 years down the line. Are we going to having internal combustion engines? Would EV take over? Would something else come along? So I think this should be time from their point of view. From the government point of view, I think demand revival is extremely important. And it is like a machinery being shut right now. It has to start somewhere, and the best way to start is to revive the demand. They don't have to take any kind of permanent measures. They can reduce GST. They can take some short-term view and give some kind of stimulus which revives the sentiment. And a car or bike purchase is heavily dependent on a sentiment. When I see all of you buying, I'll also buy. When I see nobody buying, I will not buy. Luckily, there's some pent-up demand already there, and festive is approaching. So October, September, they'll be festive for the country, and there are certain segments in India which are not as affected as, let's say, an SME or a salaried. So that would be my, let's say, demand from the government, that they should do something to revive the demand, and that would have a cascading effect on all the component manufacturers and the OEM manufacturers and everybody. Of course, the challenges of COVID are here, but we have to deal with them, and we have to revive the whole thing. So yeah, this is what, and in fact, one interesting thing about our industry, the entire anti-China sentiment that we've got recently for about a month or so, I think if government does something there to revive the auto industry, there is going to be a long-term fruit as well, because tons of component manufacturers and small ancillary manufacturers could actually become independent, and they could get a new lease of life, or maybe they could become a very large manufacturer at some point. So I think putting some stimulus there could help in that aspect as well. Make in India.
Yeah, thank you. I'll come to you, Professor Tripathi, once again.
Yeah.
So our economy was already facing sluggish demand before the pandemic started. We have talked about the slump in demand, barring the agricultural and perhaps the healthcare system. Of course, yesterday I saw many news items that even healthcare system, and especially the super specialty hospitals, are also going to face problems, are already facing a problem, and so on. So let me take you to the slump of 2008. And as you would remember, this also resulted in large-scale unemployment, stagnant consumer demand, and drop in investments. but the recovery was also rather remarkable, at least for certain segments. So although it is a little premature because of the uncertainties of the pandemic, but how would you compare the two scenarios?
Okay. So if I look at the 2008, what happened in 2008 was that when I look at the GDP growth rate, if I remember correctly, somewhere in 2007, we were growing at about 9%. 2008, we dropped to below 4%. And by 2009, we had again climbed up to above 8%. So that was actually pretty remarkable. One big change right now is that in 2008, while the entire world was talking about recession, India was a recession in still a comparative stage. Our growth rates were still higher than US. And we didn't live up to that 8%, 9% level, but we were still better off. So in this situation, when we are talking of 2020, I don't see that even that 4% growth rate is going to happen. There's a high chance we'll get into a negative growth rate. So that's a bad part. The good part is that while the 2008 recession was driven, it came from US, it came from US and Europe, and it was primarily driven by the financial sector, the subprime crisis, the housing bubble, etc. And that depressed demand and that depressed the entire economy. And still we are talking about, when we look at it in hindsight, we realize that okay, people were discussing about what really caused it, whether it was the monetary policy or the fiscal policy, or it was a combination of multiple things. And as Mr. Sharma was talking about, for consumers, the sentiments are pretty important. So at that time, and even now, we have not been able to diagnose what was the real cause. We are still searching that, okay, what really caused it. But when we're talking of 2020, I think more or less everybody agrees that there's a single cause. While there might be other minor factors, but the single biggest cause that is causing in a drop in demand is the COVID pandemic. So once we are able to get through it, once we have a vaccine or once we have a better cure for managing it, I think the consumer sentiments would take over, and we would say, okay, we have the day we come out of the situation, that would push the demand. The only major issue right now is, I think, the unemployment situation. The MSMEs and more importantly, the informal sector, they are facing a lot of lack of demand, and that is causing the whole unemployment situation. So that's the one that's going to be a real dampener. But I hope we can take care of that. Maybe we'll need to invest more in Manrega schemes, all the migrants. But that's one key to managing the crisis.
Good. So, Mr. Ramnath, I'll come to you again. We've all talked about various measures already, but still, specifically, there are two things. One, there are many predictions about what's going to happen, and India may be it's already one of the worst affected. They say it may become the worst affected country. But I don't want to get into numbers. Fact is that there is a lot of noise about peaks and spreads and so on. Lockdown today, unlock tomorrow, containment zone tomorrow. There is a uncertainty, and that definitely affects sentiment. So how do you see that? And also now they're talking about that there is a possibility of higher NPAs and capital erosion of banks, both private and public. So manufacturers may not borrow, banks may be unsure about extending loans, consumption remains sluggish. In all this, you've talked of some measures, but specifically a transformational change or from policy point of view, what would be your recommendation?
Okay. I see every problem or crisis as a solution or an opportunity, and I believe this government too, in some measure, has thought about it the same way. And I'm specifically referring to the Atmanirbhar slogan or the Atmanirbhar theme or Atmanirbhar concept that the government has announced. And I think it's a good thing. It is like this government is trying to use this crisis to create a 1991 part 2 or a liberalization part 2, which is good. And if I have to link it with some of the announcements that the finance minister did during her speech in May, some of them, like the Essential Commodities Act, has been modified. I would prefer that it had been completely eliminated, but nevertheless, now farmers can sell across state boundaries. What that would do is drive investment or private investment into cold chains and agriculture and farmer infrastructure. Similarly, there was some announcement on privatization of coal mining. Again, I'll call this old wine in a new bottle because this already existed. But again, if it helps to stimulate demand, great, because it's again a step change. Similarly, there were announcements on defense procurement. All these are transformational changes because what it does is using this crisis as a time to make those big changes, which then once the crisis is over takes India into a new trajectory. And there are many such other policies and changes that the finance minister announced, like removing some of the draconian parts of the Companies Act, etc. So I think it's a good way. The government is thinking transformational, which is good. Now, key here is all these are nice things, but the crisis is here and now. And the government needs to act quickly in a time-bound fashion. It can't take forever to get these policies implemented and taken. Otherwise, the investment will also take time, and then the trickle-down effect and the demand will again take time to come up. Some of the examples of good implementation, and I would here like to take your example of how you implemented Train 18 in about less than 2 years. That's the kind of implementation that needs to be done because the crisis is big. You need that kind of quick, rapid, time-bound implementation. Having the right team together, having empowered teams which can take decisions and can implement it. The other example which comes to mind, which was again good implementation, was the UIDAI, so the Aadhaar card. Again, you got some expert from outside, empowered him, and then he got it done. And because of which today you're able to do the direct benefit transfer, etc. So what I'm saying is the government does have good ideas. The transformational changes ideas are there, but key is in implementation. The God is always in the details. The God is always in the implementation. And I believe the key is how quickly these schemes can be implemented so that you get investment. And then the whole economy gets primed. You have investment, and again, as somebody mentioned, it's got a huge multiplier effect. And then you see the demand coming up. So that's my take on this.
Yeah, so thank you. But before I go to Mr. Sharma, I have a question for you, Mr. Ramnath. Very quick, and a quick reply. Well, government spending, of course. What about government expenditure on itself? And how do you see preparedness of government to cut it down? Briefly.
Yeah, good point. I believe this is again a good opportunity, transformational again. If the government can cut down 100 ministries and 200 departments in it, so quick response.
Okay, all right, I get your point. And Mr. Sharma, you already talked about what the private sector should do. So large companies would survive by belt tightening and so on. What about smaller, mid-sized companies? Any mantra for them in these difficult times? And also a quick comment on the much touted Atmanirbhar policy, a new avatar of Make in India. Make in India, to my mind, actually did not achieve much because it was only 50% value manufacturing in India and no content of any innovation or design in it. So an automotive sector is an important area in which to innovate. So quick comment on these two.
Sorry, I'll divide the whole thing into 3 topics quickly. One would be the companies that are endangered themselves. So while you say that the big companies could do belt tightening and survive, I think we run a very small organization here. Carval is not very big. It will come under the SME, and we can tell you that we can do the same thing as well. All the companies surviving or survival is your own first, let's say, what do you say, thing. Then really for government to depend on or somebody else to depend on. So everything and anything should be tried, and I'm fairly sure most of them would have tried that, and the good companies would survive. Second would be the private sector, the larger organizations. I believe always that not everything can be done by you alone, no matter how big you are. A collaboration is the key. So you should always, let's say, nurture, build some small, let's say, organizations, maybe startups, maybe small organizations which are not directly competing with you, but complementing you, and give them some, let's say, space wherein they can grow with you, and then eventually either they complement your business or you have opportunity to acquire them or collaborate with them in some way. Third would be government. Of course, government, I mean, for example, whenever there is a crisis, a typical phenomenon for a corporate or government or anybody would be to cut down on costs that seem unnecessary, which is typically what you do every day, which gets you results that is necessary, and anything which could be not getting you result today, could be futuristic, is normally shelved. That should not happen. Innovation is a long-term thing, and it requires effort, and especially in times like these. I'll give an example. Let's look at EV category. So electric vehicles, right? Before this pandemic, government had been very, very pro about talking EV. And I'm fairly sure this pandemic, the biggest loser is going to be that kind of segment, because this is not a need right away. Consumers are not going to demand an electric vehicle, but there'll be companies, small companies, startups, small, let's say, enterprises, which are trying to do something, and they would vanish. Once they vanish, you'll get depend again on international giants, whether they are Chinese folks or somebody else, doesn't matter, but you go back to square zero. So which is again the answer to your Atmanirbhar question, which is I think what we are doing is when government supports initiatives like these, you actually get multi-fold benefits, and I think they should do something there, and it will not require tons of money. It is a fraction of anything that they do every day.
Okay. Okay, gentlemen. So a quick closing comment from each of you. I'll start with Professor Tripathi.
Frankly, I think human beings are quite resilient, and I actually believe that we are still going to a tiny virus can't really kill our hopes. And I have a lot of faith in people that we'll again go back to our previous situation, and we'll go up even in India or across the globe. We'll go back to our old growth trajectory.
Yeah, Mr. Ramnath.
I hope India comes out of this crisis much stronger, much better, and much more prosperous than what it has gone into, a new resurgent India. That's what I hope.
Well,
That's what
I like your optimism. And Mr. Sharma.
In fact, I'll give you a proof of optimism, Mr. Mani. What Mr. Tripathi just talked about, addition to that, just to give an example, Carvale gets about 33 million visits in a month, pre-COVID era, okay? And we all know car is an expensive product. People should not really bother with buying right now. Would you believe my traffic extrapolated for July today sits at about 32 million, which means we've already hit our pre-COVID numbers. So there are people looking for let's say these things. Of course, they may not buy. Sentiment, real fear, job loss, etc. But I think India is a very large country, and we have big, aspirations ahead. So I think we'll sail along quite fine.
So that's another positive note. Thank you, gentlemen, Professor Tripathi, Mr. Ramnath, Mr. Sharma, for joining us today and bringing, hopefully, some good news for our viewers. We come to the end of this program, viewers. I'll be there again next Thursday with another session of Straight Drive. Namaskar.